"Stay down," he barked, eyes scanning the club like a predator hunting prey. Nevaeh's dark eyes met his for the first time, wide with fear, yet drawn to something in him she couldn't name. I can't," she whispered, but he silenced her with a look, sharp, commanding, protective. The bass shook the floor like a heartbeat gone mad. Smoke hung in the air, neon lights slicing through the darkness of the club, casting jagged shadows on the walls. Patrons screamed, danced, and drank, oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Nevaeh, a young ballet dancer from America, moved across the stage as though she were the eye of that storm. Every pirouette was precise, every leap a defiance of gravity, every glance a silent story. Seoul had been everything she dreamed of until tonight. He was watching. From a shadowed corner, Junwoo, king of the Korean underworld, observed her with a gaze that could cut steel. Fearless, precise, ruthless, he was a man who demanded control over life and death alike. And yet, he couldn't look away from her. She was beauty in motion, grace in a world defined by violence. Then the first gunshot shattered the illusion. Chaos erupted. Rival gang members stormed the club, weapons drawn, bullets ripping through the air. The crowd screamed, panic spread like wildfire, and smoke turned the room into a haze of terror. Nevaeh froze, her heart pounding as she realized she had become a target. Junwoo didn't think. He moved like shadow incarnate, weaving through the chaos. With one swift motion, he grabbed her, pulling her behind the bar. His chest pressed to hers, strong and protective, his hands firm. "Stay down," he barked, eyes scanning the club like a predator hunting prey. Nevaeh's dark eyes met his for the first time, wide with fear, yet drawn to something in him she couldn't name. I can't," she whispered, but he silenced her with a look, sharp, commanding, protective. Bullets flew, shattering glass, splintering wood, screams slicing through the smoke. Yet Junwoo moved with lethal grace, neutralizing threats with a calm born of years, surviving in a world where mercy was weakness. When the last of the intruders fell, the club finally quieted, leaving only the echo of chaos behind. He turned to her, face set in hard lines, but eyes betraying the storm inside. "You're alive," he said, almost to himself. I think so," she stammered, chest heaving, limbs trembling. He extended a black-gloved hand. "Stay with me tonight. You're not safe out there. Not anywhere." Her mind screamed caution. Every instinct told her to run. But something in the way he had saved her, in the raw intensity of his presence, made her nod. I understand." The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, time slowed. Two worlds collided, one of ruthless shadows and one of pure, fragile light. And neither of them could yet know how dangerous, or how passionate, this collision would become. The streets of Seoul blurred past the tinted windows of Junwoo's sleek black car. Nevaeh sat stiffly beside him, still trembling, still trying to process the chaos she had narrowly escaped. The adrenaline from the club hadn't yet faded, and neither had the piercing memory of gunfire. "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Somewhere you'll be safe," he replied, eyes on the road, jaw tight. "And if anyone asks, you don't exist tonight." The car slowed, turning into a gated estate hidden behind walls as high as 10 men stacked shoulder to shoulder. Security cameras blinked, and armed guards observed from the shadows. But Junwoo ignored them all. His world moved by his rules alone. When the car stopped, he opened the door for her, and she hesitated. Luxury and danger wrapped around the mansion like a velvet cloak. The tall glass windows reflected the city lights, but inside, the house promised silence, power, and secrets. "You don't have to be afraid," he said, reading her hesitation like a map. "Not here." She stepped inside cautiously, heels clicking against marble floors, the space both elegant and intimidating. Every detail screamed wealth. Fine art, high ceilings, the subtle hum of security measures she couldn't see. He led her to a guest room, pristine and quiet. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "Lock the door and don't leave. Someone's already tried to kill you once tonight. I won't let it happen again." Nevaeh's chest tightened. You risked yourself for me back there. Why?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paced to the window, the city lights painting shadows across his face. "Because I can't stand the thought of losing you. Not to them, not to anyone." Her heart skipped. There was danger in his words, danger in his tone, but also something else. Something raw, unguarded, that didn't belong in his world of violence. I'm not used to this," she admitted, finally allowing herself to look at him fully. "I'm just a dancer. You're a kingpin." He turned to her, dark eyes glinting with both warning and fascination. "And yet, here you are, alive, because I'm holding on to you. That's the only thing that matters." The room felt smaller suddenly, their worlds compressing, colliding, uncomfortably close. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the weight of his presence pressing against her own fragile humanity. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, Nevaeh allowed herself to exhale. For the first time, Junwoo allowed someone to see the part of him he kept hidden. The part that didn't thrive in fear, but in the rare, unguarded moments when someone mattered more than power. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew this was only the beginning. The storm outside was still raging, gang wars, betrayals, shadows. But inside these walls, there was a fragile, dangerous sanctuary. And as the night deepened, so did their unspoken connection, threaded with danger, desire, and the undeniable pull of something neither could ignore. Nevaeh woke to silence. The mansion was quiet, almost eerily so, save for the soft hum of the city beyond the walls. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room in pale gold. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind still spinning from the previous night's chaos. The previous evening, the gunfire, the chaos at the club, and the overwhelming presence of Junwoo felt surreal. And yet, here she was, alive, untouched, and under the protection of the most dangerous man in Seoul. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. "Come in," she called, heart fluttering. Junwoo stepped inside, dressed in a crisp black shirt, his dark hair still slightly tousled from the night. He didn't smile. That wasn't his way. But there was an intensity in his gaze that made her pulse quicken. "You need to eat," he said simply, gesturing toward a tray he had placed on the table. "You need to stay strong if you want to survive this city. And if you want to survive me." She blinked, half amused, half terrified. "Survive you?" He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You think this is a game, dancer? This world I live in, it doesn't forgive mistakes. And you, my dear, have already been targeted once." Nevaeh's stomach twisted. I don't know anything about this world. I'm just a girl in a city that wants to chew you up." He interrupted, his voice low, commanding, yet not without a trace of concern. "That's exactly why I'm keeping you close. You won't survive on your own." She studied him carefully. Everything about him screamed danger. The sharp lines of his face, the dark fire in his eyes, the aura of power he carried effortlessly. And yet, beneath it all, she could sense the faintest flicker of something human, something that could care, something that could want. A tense silence followed, broken only by the soft click of her ballet shoes against the floor as she rose and moved toward the window. "And what happens if I don't want your protection?" Junwoo stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the room, his presence undeniable. "Then I make you want it." The words hung in the air like a threat, yet in a way that made her pulse race. Her chest tightened, and for the first time, she realized how drawn she was to him. To the danger, to the power, to the man who had risked everything to keep her alive. Hours passed, and the city outside continued its chaotic rhythm. But inside the mansion, a fragile bond began to form. He showed her the hidden corridors, the private security, the ways he kept one step ahead of death every day. She watched, fascinated and terrified, as the man who was feared by the entire underworld moved with lethal precision, yet remained undeniably human in the moments he allowed her to see. By nightfall, Nevaeh found herself standing on the balcony, looking out at the sprawling city below. Junwoo approached, silent as a shadow, and leaned against the railing beside her. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," he murmured. "Graceful, fearless, alive in a world that doesn't care about life." Her breath caught. She wanted to tell him she wasn't fearless, that she was terrified, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she said nothing, and the silence between them said more than words ever could. And in that moment, high above the city, between shadows and light, between fear and desire, something fragile and dangerous bloomed. The beginning of a love that neither the underworld nor fate could contain, though both would try. Night fell like a velvet curtain over Seoul, but the city never truly slept. Lights flickered, sirens wailed in the distance, and somewhere in the streets below, power shifted quietly in the shadows. Junwoo's mansion, perched on its hidden hill, seemed a sanctuary, but even here, danger could reach them. Nevaeh moved carefully through the expansive halls, still adjusting to the reality of her new life. She had spent hours watching him, observing how he spoke, how he moved, how his men obeyed every silent command. And she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. There was danger in him, yes, but also an intensity that made her heart race in a way she had never known. "You shouldn't wander alone," Junwoo said suddenly, appearing behind her. His voice was calm, but there was a tension in it that made her freeze. I'm just trying to understand," she admitted, turning to face him. "This world, your world, it's so much bigger than I imagined." He stepped closer, dark eyes scanning her face, as if weighing how much of her he could trust. "It's bigger than anyone imagines, and it's ruthless. Every mistake costs more than money. Sometimes it costs life." Before she could respond, a distant explosion shook the mansion's gates. Nevaeh instinctively jumped, and Junwoo's hand shot out, gripping her arm, steadying her. His presence was overwhelming, protective, possessive, and unshakable. "They found us," he murmured, voice low and dangerous. "They know where you are. I should have moved you sooner." Fear surged through her, but alongside it was a strange thrill. She realized that in the midst of danger, with death so close, she trusted him entirely. He had become her anchor, her shield. Without warning, he grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the private elevator that led to a hidden basement. A safe room equipped with every luxury and security measure imaginable. "Stay close. Don't leave my side." Inside the safe room, silence fell again, broken only by the soft hum of security monitors. Junwoo leaned against the wall, his gaze fixed on her. "You shouldn't be here. This world, it will try to consume you. And yet, here you are, alive." Nevaeh stepped closer, courage blooming despite the fear. "I'm alive because of you," she whispered. "And I don't know why, but I feel like I belong here with you." For a moment, the ruthless facade of the Mafia boss faltered. He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle, almost tender, an intimacy neither of them had expected. "You're reckless," he murmured, voice low, rough. "And yet, can't let you go. Not now. Not ever." The words hung between them, heavy with desire, danger, and unspoken promises. In that moment, the walls of the mansion, the violence outside, the threats closing in, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the fragile, dangerous connection that had formed between a ballet dancer from America and a king of shadows from Seoul. And somewhere deep inside both of them, they knew this was only the beginning. The storm of enemies, secrets, and passion was coming, and neither could resist the pull of the other, no matter how deadly it became. The mansion had never felt so tense. Every shadow seemed to whisper threats. Every corner held the promise of danger. Junwoo paced the grand hall, his mind a storm of strategy and fury. His enemies were bold, too bold, and they had crossed a line by targeting Nevaeh. Nevaeh stayed close, her hands clutched tightly in front of her. The elegance and poise of a ballet dancer seemed almost fragile in the face of impending violence, but she refused to let fear control her. She had survived chaos once. She could survive it again. "They're coming," Junwoo said suddenly, his eyes narrowing as he watched the monitors. "They want you, and they're not leaving until they get it." Nevaeh's pulse quickened. "Then we fight?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. He turned to her, dark eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment, the ruthless boss she had feared looked almost human. "Not alone," he said. "You stay here. You survive. That's your only job." But survival wasn't just about hiding. Moments later, chaos erupted outside the gates. Explosions shook the perimeter, flames licking at the walls, gunfire echoing into the night. Junwoo's men responded instantly, but the attackers were determined, coordinated, and merciless. Nevaeh's heart pounded as she watched him move. Fast, precise, lethal. He was a storm of motion, taking control of every second, neutralizing every threat with calculated efficiency. And yet, every time he glanced toward her, she felt a strange warmth amidst the terror. His determination to keep her alive. The fight lasted hours, adrenaline and fear blending into a haze. When the last of the attackers fell, silence returned. Heavy, oppressive, but alive with victory. Junwoo finally turned to her, sweat and grime on his face, eyes burning with a mix of fury and relief. "You're safe," he said, though his voice carried the weight of every life he had taken tonight. Nevaeh stepped closer, trembling but unafraid. "You risked everything for me?" she said, her voice barely audible over the echoes of battle. "Why?" He reached for her, pulling her close, and for the first time, the walls he had built around himself seemed to crumble. "Because I can't lose you," he admitted, his voice low, fierce, and trembling with unspoken emotion. "Not to them. Not to anyone." She looked up at him, her dark eyes meeting his, and something unspoken passed between them. A bond forged in chaos, in danger, in the thin line between life and death. Slowly, tentatively, she reached up, resting her hand against his chest. He tensed under her touch, but did not pull away. For the first time, Nevaeh realized she was no longer just a dancer in a city of shadows. She was a part of something larger, something dangerous, something intoxicating, and she didn't want to escape it. Junwoo cupped her face, eyes searching hers as though trying to memorize every line, every shadow. "You belong with me," he whispered, almost to himself, "and I'll do everything to make sure no one ever takes you away." Outside, the city continued its endless hum of chaos, but inside the mansion, for one fleeting moment, there was only them. A dangerous love born in fire, thriving in the shadows, unbroken and unshakable. The mansion was quiet in the early hours, the city lights shimmering through the windows like distant stars. Junwoo sat alone in his private study, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. His mind should have been at ease. The last attack had been neutralized. But something gnawed at him, a tension he couldn't shake. Nevaeh was gone. He had thought she was asleep, safe in her room. He had checked twice, thrice, the bed had been empty. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain calm. Every second mattered. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. "Where the hell are you?" he muttered, rising, storming through the mansion with the precision of a predator. "Did one of my men fail?" The guards reported nothing. Cameras showed only shadows moving through the halls, but no sign of her leaving. No sign of forced entry, no sign of abduction, just gone. Junwoo's chest tightened. The first pangs of fear clawed at him, the kind he rarely allowed himself to feel. For the first time, he realized how much she had become a part of him, how fragile his control over his world truly was. Hours passed. Calls went unanswered. Messages vanished into silence. The underworld whispered, as if sensing his vulnerability. The ruthless kingpin of Seoul was on his knees in frustration, searching for the woman who had somehow slipped through his grasp. And then, a note appeared, Small, black-edged, placed carefully on his desk. I'm leaving for your sake. Don't follow me, or it will only get worse. Junwoo's fingers tightened around the paper until the edges crumpled. Fury, fear, and helplessness collided in his chest. She was alive, he could feel it, but gone. And in the cruelest twist of fate, the one person he had promised to protect had chosen to vanish into the unknown, taking control of her own safety and shattering his. He didn't move immediately. He stared at the note, the silence of the mansion deafening. Then, with a sudden lethal calm, he rose, eyes hardening. Find her, he commanded, voice low, dangerous. Every street, every shadow, every corner of this city. She belongs to me, and I will bring her back, no matter what it takes. Outside, Seoul thrummed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing within one man's soul. Junwoo's empire had never been tested like this. Not by enemies, not by rivals, not by the law. But now the stakes were personal. Nevaeh had disappeared, and the King of Shadows would stop at nothing to find her. The streets of Seoul were a maze of neon and shadows, alive with the hum of cars, the chatter of late-night revelers, and the invisible currents of power that flowed beneath the city. Junwoo moved through it like a shadow himself. Quiet, precise, lethal. Every alley, every street, every surveillance feed became a weapon in his search for her. She's alive, he muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the darkness. And she'll pay if anyone has hurt her. Meanwhile, Nevaeh crouched atop a fire escape several blocks away, her chest heaving from both exhaustion and adrenaline. She had left the mansion to protect him, to give him a chance to stay unscathed from the enemies that hunted him. Every step she had taken had been calculated, every turn a gamble. But leaving hadn't been easy. The pull toward him was magnetic, undeniable, and yet she had to survive, and survive meant distance. Junwoo's name had left her lips countless times during the escape. He would find her. He always found what he wanted. And she couldn't afford to be found, not yet. Hours passed, and the city seemed endless. Every shadow could hide danger, every stranger could be a threat. Yet through it all, her thoughts never left him. The way he had saved her, the way his presence had consumed her, and the promise of something neither of them had dared to name. And then, a familiar voice shattered the night. Nevaeh! She froze, heart-stopping. One word, low and deadly, carried through the alley. Junwoo! She whispered, half relief, half fear. He stepped from the shadows, suit dark, eyes sharper than ever. But the intensity softened only when he saw her unharmed. Why did you leave? He demanded, every syllable edged with pain and fury. Do you have any idea what I've risked? I had to, she replied, voice trembling. I couldn't let them hurt you, not because of me. He closed the distance between them in a heartbeat, hands gripping her arms, forcing her to meet his gaze. Do you understand? You don't run from my world. You survive it with me. If you leave again, I can't promise your safety. Tears threatened her eyes, but she held them back. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to protect you. I love you, Junwoo. I can't stay away, but I can't risk you either. For the first time, the ruthless Mafia boss seemed vulnerable, his dark armor cracking under the weight of emotion. He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing the tears from her cheeks. You don't have to protect me, he whispered, voice low, raw. I'm dangerous, but you're mine, and I'll risk everything for you. Even my empire, even my life. The city seemed to hold its breath as they stood there, shadows of danger surrounding them, yet the world narrowing to just the two of them. Nevaeh's lips trembled, and finally, in a heartbeat of courage and surrender, she leaned into him. Junwoo's arms tightened around her, fierce, possessive, protective. A promise that neither the world nor its enemies could break. Tonight they survived. Tonight, love won. Fragile, dangerous, and unstoppable. But somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes watched, waiting, knowing the storm was far from over. The mansion's gates were quiet, almost deceptively so. Inside, Junwoo moved like a panther, silent, precise, every muscle coiled for action. Nevaeh stood close behind him, heart pounding, yet no longer afraid. She had seen his world now, had survived its first brutal lessons, and a strange confidence had begun to grow inside her. "They're close," he murmured, scanning the monitors. "Closer than I thought. And they're not coming alone." Suddenly, the night erupted in violence. Explosions rocked the perimeter, and armored vehicles crashed against the gates. Gunfire shredded the air, the familiar roar of chaos invading their sanctuary. "Stay behind me," Junwoo commanded, voice cold and lethal. His men flanked him, but he didn't wait. He moved forward, every step deadly, every glance calculating. Nevaeh's pulse raced, but instead of retreating, she followed. She had learned something essential. Survival wasn't hiding. Survival was fighting, and with him she could do that. The attackers stormed the mansion, a coordinated strike that even Junwoo hadn't fully anticipated. But he adapted, moving through the chaos like water, lethal and unstoppable. And every time he looked at her, she saw it. His world of shadows was dangerous, yes, but it had a heartbeat, one that now belonged to her. In the thick of the firefight, one of the intruders cornered Nevaeh, a gun raised. Time slowed. She could see the glint of metal, the danger, the inevitability. But before panic could take hold, Junwoo appeared, moving faster than thought. A single, fluid motion: disarm, strike, control. The intruder crumpled, unconscious. Junwoo turned, his eyes locking on hers. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, breathless. "No. You saved me again." He pulled her close, hand firm on her waist, eyes scanning for more threats. "You don't leave me ever," he growled. "Do you understand?" Her hands rested against his chest, feeling the solid weight of the man who had risked everything for her. I understand," she whispered. The fight raged on through the night, but by dawn, the mansion stood victorious. Scarred, yes, but theirs. And as the first light of morning spilled across the rooftops of Seoul, Junwoo finally allowed himself to exhale. Nevaeh looked up at him, her hair tangled, clothes torn, but her spirit unbroken. You always survive," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. He tilted his head, dark eyes softening for the first time in hours. "Not always," he admitted, "but I will, for you." For the first time, they were alone, truly alone, amidst the wreckage of the night. Danger still lurked beyond the walls, enemies still plotted, but in this moment, nothing else mattered. Nevaeh pressed herself against him, letting herself feel what she had avoided before. The love born in chaos, stronger than fear, deeper than danger, and impossible to deny. And somewhere, deep inside, Junwoo knew the truth. He could survive anything, any enemy, any threat, as long as she was with him. The mansion was quiet after the storm. The night's chaos had left marks: shattered glass, scorched walls, and the lingering hum of adrenaline. Episode 1 ends here. Watch out for episode 2 coming up tomorrow.